The auction room felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was the high ceilings, or maybe it was the way everyone avoided looking directly at me. I stood near the back, hands tucked into my pockets, trying to stay unnoticed as bidders moved from item to item. Old paintings, tarnished silverware, bits of my great-aunt Helena's life scattered across velvet-covered tables. Then Ethan's voice tore through the room. "That's mine!" I flinched. People turned. And before I could even understand what he was yelling about, I saw him pointing, not at an object, but at me. Or rather, at the thing being held between me and him. Mr. Callahan, the family lawyer, lifted a deep burgundy folder into the air. His expression was strangely calm, almost rehearsed. "This," he said, projecting his voice, "was specifically left to you in Helena's final instructions." My throat tightened. I hadn't known about any personal bequest. Ethan stormed toward us, face flushed, fists tight. "He wouldn't leave that to him. Check it again. You made a mistake." The room fell silent. Even the auctioneer lowered his gavel. I felt the weight of eyes pressing into my spine. Curiosity, judgment, something darker. And yet, Mr. Callahan didn't flinch. He stepped closer to me and placed the folder in my hands. It was heavier than I expected, sealed with a brittle wax crest I recognized from Helena's desk. Before I could speak, Ethan spat. "You don't deserve it. She barely even knew you." But that wasn't true, and he knew it. My fingers closed around the folder, and in that instant, I sensed it. Whatever was inside wasn't just an inheritance. It was a wound, and opening it might tear the family apart. I hadn't planned on coming back to Helena's house so soon after the funeral. Honestly, if it weren't for the auction, I probably wouldn't have come at all. The place still smelled like her lavender sachets, that soft, powdery scent that clung to every curtain and drawer. It made the loss feel fresh again. Ethan, on the other hand, moved through the house like he owned it. He always had. Growing up, we spent every holiday together, but our closeness was a performance more than a bond. Our mothers insisted we got along, even when the tension between them seeped down into us. Marlene raised Ethan as if he were the rightful heir to everything. The family name, the family pride, the family's secrets. And maybe that's why he was unraveling now. Helena had been different. She never cared about those hierarchies. She'd invite me over for tea, slip old stories into our conversations, always hinting at things she wished she could say. She had a way of looking at me with a mix of regret and intention, as if I was supposed to understand some invisible burden she was passing on. I never did. Not until the lawyer handed me that folder. "Why you?" Ethan had sneered earlier, his voice dripping with envy. But beneath the anger, I noticed something else in his eyes. Panic. As if my name on that folder threatened to expose something he'd spent years hiding. And then there was Marlene. She hovered near the doorway, arms tightly crossed, giving small, sharp nods to anyone who met her gaze, like she was managing the room. But every time her eyes drifted to the folder in my hands, her mask cracked. She knew exactly what it was, and she didn't want me to open it. I tried to slip away from the crowd, hoping to find a quiet corner where I could breathe and maybe gather the courage to break the wax seal on the folder. But every step I took seemed to draw more attention. Conversations hushed when I passed, heads turned. It felt like walking through a tunnel lined with unspoken accusations. Ethan wasn't done with me. He intercepted me near the old staircase,
blocking my path with that rigid, self-righteous stance he'd perfected since we were kids. "Hand it over," he said, his voice low but trembling. "You don't even know what you're holding." "That's exactly why I need to read it," I replied. He scoffed. "You think Helena cared more about you than about her own blood?" But the way he clung to the banister told me he wasn't confident in that question. Marlene joined him a moment later, placing one perfectly manicured hand on his shoulder. She didn't look at me. She looked through me, the way someone studies a stain they want gone. "You're upsetting the room. This is not the time for theatrics." "Theatrics?" I almost laughed. "I didn't ask for any of this." "That folder wasn't meant for you," she said, her tone tightening. "Helena wasn't herself at the end. You know that." A lie. Too quick, too prepared. Before I could press her, the lawyer appeared behind me with an oddly calm expression. "If you need a private space to review the document," he said softly, "there's a study down the hall." Ethan shot him a murderous look. Marlene stiffened. And in their silence, I finally felt it, the shift. This wasn't about money or keepsakes. This was fear. And I was holding the thing they feared most. The study was dimly lit, the curtains half drawn, as if Helena had arranged them that way herself. Dust floated lazily in the slanted light from the window, making the room feel suspended in time. I closed the door behind me, shutting out the murmurs from the auction and the restless footsteps pacing the hall. For a moment, I just held the folder. The wax crest, Helena's old family seal, was cracked at the edges, brittle but still intact. My thumb hovered over it, hesitating. Part of me wondered if crossing this line would change everything forever. But another part, the part that remembered Helena's lingering looks, insisted this was exactly what she wanted. I broke the seal. Inside was a stack of age documents, neatly tied with a thin ribbon. The top sheet was a handwritten letter, the ink slightly faded, but unmistakably hers. My breath hitched as I unfolded it. If you were reading this, it means I finally had the courage I lacked in life. My heart thudded harder. The letter continued, each line pulling me deeper. There are truths in our family that were buried to protect reputations, not people. You deserve to know your place in this story, even if others wish you didn't. Below the letter was a photograph, black and white, torn at one corner. Ethan's mother, Marlene, younger, her expression guarded. Beside her stood a man I didn't recognize, tall, serious, holding a newborn wrapped in a patterned blanket. The same patterned blanket Helena kept in her cedar chest. And then I saw it. On the back of the photo, in Helena's handwriting, "He has a right to know." My hands began to tremble. Footsteps approached the study door. Slow, intentional. Someone knew exactly what I had just discovered. The doorknob rattled once before turning, slow and deliberate. I barely had time to slide the photograph back into the folder when Ethan pushed the door open and stepped inside, closing it behind him with a soft click that felt more ominous than a slam. His eyes darted to the open folder on the desk. "You opened it," he said, voice cracking around the edges. "I had every right to." He took a step closer, too close. No, you didn't." His jaw tightened, but underneath the anger was something colder, something like dread. "You weren't supposed to find that." The sentence hung in the air like smoke. I straightened, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Why not, Ethan? What are you so afraid of?" He exhaled shakily, rubbing the back of his neck.
For a moment, he looked like a kid caught doing something wrong, but then the mask slammed back into place. "That picture means nothing," he snapped. "It's just old family drama. You're reading too much into it. Your mother is in it, with a man who isn't your father. And that blanket—" "Shut up," his voice cracked again, louder this time. "You don't know what you're talking about." He moved toward the desk as if to snatch the folder from me, but I stepped between him and the documents. His breath hit my face, sharp, uneven. "This isn't about you," I said quietly. "It never was." His eyes twitched, and for a second the truth flashed across his expression, raw, exposed. He wasn't angry at the discovery. He was terrified of what it proved. Before he could respond, Marlene's voice cut through the crack under the door. "Ethan, enough." The knob twisted again. She was coming in, and she was done pretending.
Marlene entered the study without waiting for permission. She brushed past Ethan, her perfume sharp and invasive, sealing the door behind her with a decisive click. The air tightened instantly, like the room itself understood this was the moment everything shifted. Her eyes landed on the folder, then on me. "So," she said, her voice controlled but trembling beneath the surface, "you've seen it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Ethan hovered behind her, shoulders hunched, waiting for her to take control the way she always did. She straightened her spine, but her composure was cracking in thin, jagged lines. "That photograph," she continued, "should have been destroyed years ago. Helena promised me she would." "Why?" I asked. Her lips tightened, not with anger, but with something closer to grief, and that scared me more than her hostility ever had. "Because it wasn't Helena's secret to expose," she said. "It was mine." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The man in that picture wasn't a stranger." She swallowed hard. "He was your father." The words shattered something in me. Not loudly, but in a deep, echoing way that hollowed out my chest. What?" My throat tightened. "That doesn't make sense. Helena never—" "She raised you," Marlene cut in, "because I couldn't, because I wouldn't. I had a reputation to protect, a marriage to maintain, and a son to think about." Ethan flinched. I felt my knees weaken as the truth settled, unbearable and undeniable. "You're saying Helena was what? A caretaker? A stand-in? Why didn't she tell me?" "She tried," she whispered, "every day. But she was afraid, and I made sure she stayed afraid." It hit me like a blow. The secrecy, the looks, the cryptic comments. It wasn't guilt. It was maternal grief and restraint. Marlene exhaled, shakily, and the final piece clicked into place. "You weren't supposed to find out like this. Not ever." But Ethan looked at me with something new in his eyes. Not fear. Rage. I stumbled back from Marlene, the room spinning as if the walls had leaned in to eavesdrop. Ethan's rage wasn't quiet anymore. It pulsed off him, sharp and electric. "So, all these years," he said, voice cracking, "I was living a lie? He's your real son, and I'm, what, your accessory?" "Ethan, stop!" Marlene reached for him, but he jerked away. "No," he snapped. "You hid this from everyone. You turned me against him before I even knew who he was." I'd never seen Ethan like this. His anger wasn't a mask. It was raw, wounded, personal. And suddenly, I didn't know whether he was my enemy or the only person in this house who truly understood betrayal. Marlene tried to steady herself, but guilt clung to her like a second skin. "You were both my sons," she whispered. Don't you dare pretend this is the same." He stormed past her and stopped inches from me. For the first time, there was no smugness, no rivalry, only the weight of everything we never knew. "I want to see the rest," he said quietly. "All of it. everything she kept from us. The shift stunned me. Ethan, on my side? I opened the folder again, hands trembling, and he leaned in, not to steal it, not to challenge me, but to share it. The tension between us twisted into something strange, a fragile, accidental alliance. Behind us, Marlene whispered, "Please, don't do this." But it was too late. The balance of the family and the estate had cracked. And then we heard it. A door closing down the hallway. Not gently, decisively. Someone else was listening. Someone we hadn't considered part of this war. Ethan looked toward the sound, jaw tight. "Who else knows?" he asked. I didn't have an answer, but the fear in Marlene's eyes told me one thing. Whoever closed that door had just become part of the story and not on our side.
The room fell silent. The lawyer didn't sit. He stood there, rigid, as if the next page in the folder carried a weight even he struggled to name. My cousin hovered near the doorway, pretending to scroll on his phone, but I could see the tension in his jaw. He was waiting for something, or afraid of something. The lawyer spoke quietly. "There's one more document you haven't seen." He slid a thick manila sheet across the table. Not a map, not an addendum, a statement, handwritten, shaky. The ink slightly smudged, like someone had been crying while writing it. My aunt's voice came alive through the words. "If they are reading this, then my decision has already caused trouble. I'm sorry, but I had no choice." My chest tightened. Trouble? From who? My cousin shifted, suddenly unable to stay still. I continued reading. "The item in question does not belong to the family. It never did. It was entrusted to me for safekeeping, and now it must go to the only person I trust." A faint ringing filled my ears. Entrusted not by the family. Who gave it to her? The next line answered that and punched the air out of my lungs. "Do not let him claim it. No matter what he says, you know the truth now." My eyes lifted slowly and locked onto my cousin. He froze. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There's more," he said. "Turn the page." I did. A single photograph slid into my lap. Black and white, old, edges burned or stained by time. My aunt, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. A tall man, a man with the same angular jaw as my cousin, a man with my cousin's eyes, but not his father. The caption in my aunt's handwriting: "This is the real story he hopes you never discover." My cousin's voice trembled. Don't read that. You don't understand." But I did. Or at least I understood enough to realize one thing. Whatever was hidden in that inheritance was never meant to belong to him. And now he knew that I knew.
The footsteps in the hallway stopped, and for a second the entire house felt like it was holding its breath. My cousin stood frozen, trembling, staring at the darkness as if expecting a ghost to step out. But no one came. No one spoke again. And slowly, painfully slowly, I realized the truth. There wasn't anyone in the hallway. The voice wasn't real. It was him, breaking under the weight of everything he'd done. He wasn't afraid of someone outside the room. He was afraid of what I now knew. I held up the map and the deed the lawyer had shown me. "This wasn't an accident," I said. She chose me because she didn't trust you anymore." My cousin's eyes filled with something between fury and despair. "You don't understand," he whispered. "That land, the old cellar, she wasn't supposed to leave it to anyone. There were promises, debts, deals you know nothing about." "Maybe not," I said. "But she spent her last months undoing whatever those promises were, and she wanted me to finish what she couldn't." The lawyer stepped closer. "Your aunt faced significant pressure to hand the property over," he said. "She refused. That's why she hid the documents. That's why she involved me." My cousin covered his face with both hands. "Everything falls on me now. Everything she tried to stop." But I didn't feel pity. Not anymore. I said quietly, "She protected me. Even from you." He looked at me then, really looked, and the fight drained out of him completely. Not anger now, just resignation. "You have no idea what's buried there. And if you go through with this, you'll learn things you can't unlearn. Maybe. But it's mine to uncover." He didn't argue. He simply walked out, leaving the house and the past behind him. When he was gone, the lawyer handed me the sealed envelope one last time. Inside was a final note from my aunt. Short, earnest, handwritten with shaking hands. The truth was never meant to stay hidden. Not from you. I folded the letter carefully and slipped the key into my pocket. Whatever waited in that old cellar, she wanted me to be the one to face it. And I would. I stepped outside into the court air, feeling the estate behind me exhale, as if relieved its secrets were finally out. Some endings aren't loud. Some endings simply settle. I looked back one last time. Some truths refuse to stay buried.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video. And if you want more twisted family secrets and unsettling discoveries, subscribe to the channel. I have plenty more waiting to be uncovered.